Hey guys, we're going to begin in a little bit.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Don. Oh, this one's a little different. I guess they changed the security.
What happened?
Oh, I was just looking at the security thing here, like for share screen. Okay, I think we can start. Okay. Hey everyone, this is COGS 18 Coding Lab 2. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your first week. And this is Paul and Ashlisha again. And
Hi.
mainly today, it's just pretty much the same thing as what we're gonna do. We're gonna start out with FAQs, and oh yeah, one thing to note is there's actually a group FAQ on the Canvas. I'm gonna go over some of that today. I think we've already talked about it last coding lab, but and then after that, Ashisha's gonna do some coding demo. Okay. Just some housekeeping items. So your coding lab 2, this is due tonight before midnight. And then your assignment 1 is due next week, Monday before midnight. And so let's begin with the group FAQ. So this first one, this just talks about using this converting the word into code. So you're gonna see this. I think it's in assignment 1, or yeah. And so if you see a word that says is not the same as, then this pretty much just means use the exclamation point and equal sign, which just means not equal or is not the same. And in the second one, when it says that find at least one integer that raises an assertion error, this just means that you need to assert an integer that will give you an error. More on this later. And the third one is we talked about this last week. So every time you see raise not implement error in the code, just put your code there and then remove this line. And then for this one, how do I add a comment to the Markdown? So adding a comment to a Markdown is just you just add text and then you put in your comment there. You don't need to put a hashtag, but in the code cell you need to put a hashtag. So for everyone that just came in, I'm just going over the FAQ from class. So for the second part of the operator questions, you're gonna see this in your coding lab 2. What you have to do is just follow what it says there, and the compare, when you compare those operators, you should be getting true for all the questions. This is just what it means. And then for this one, when it says like assert none, you're gonna see this in like part 3. You just pretty much type in assert none. And in the same portion, it wants you to declare a Boolean. So I think just to specify, a Boolean, this was covered in class, but a Boolean is like true or false. So you have a variable, and then you have to assign that variable a Boolean. That's what that means. Okay, Ashisha, do you want to just do the demo first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me stop sharing.
Mhm. Can you all see my screen? So today we're going to talk about variables, operators, and some conditionals and assert statements. This is going to help you with your assignment 1 as well as your coding lab 2. Let's start by talking about variables. So in class you've studied about variables. These are just values. These are just something that stores values, right? It can be called anything. It can be called whatever you want it to be called. And then there are some types, data types of variables, like integer, string, boolean, none, and float. Let's see all of these one by one. If I call my variable var1 and I initiate it to 2, and then I see the type of this variable, I run this block, it says int. That means my var1 stores an integer type of value. All right. Similarly, the same concept goes for string, boolean, and everything else. So for string, I can call it, I can store any value which is a string in var2. If I say hello, and then I type var2, it says it's a string, str type. And then if I want to have a variable, which is a type of type boolean, I can call it, I can save a true in it and then maybe see what type it is by doing this. So let's say bool, right? That's the same for none and float. So a thing to note, none is a data type which can have a none type value. That means it does not have anything. So it seems kind of weird, but it's useful because when you want to create an empty variable, for example, you can just say that it's none in the beginning and then maybe do types. So it's a none type value. All right. Now for float, if you have a decimal point number, suppose 2.3, it's called a float value and the data type is called float. All right. So these are some of the variables. A good coding practice is to give meaningful names to the variables. Do not give names like ABC or XYZ. So for example, if you're working with the height of the tree, for example, right? So if you want to store the height of the tree into a variable, I would call that the tree height variable or something like that, right? I'm not going to call it A or B because that's not explanatory, all right? Although the computer would understand it, but when a human is reading your code, it becomes difficult if you have a lot many variables, right? Okay. Now, do not name your variables as keywords. So there are a lot of keywords in Python or in any other coding language for that matter. Some of them are if, for example, else, or these are the keywords, right? We use them for a very specific purpose. So don't name your variables as these, right? Don't say if is equals to 2. If I run this, if I try to run this, it's just going to show me an error because it expects some other syntax after if, because if is used for a different purpose. All right. Okay. Now that's it about variables. Let's talk about operators. So there are many operators, starting off with arithmetic. So these are the basic operators: subtraction, addition, division, multiplication. Now, let's actually look at the mod operator. If I say var1 is equals to 2 mod 3, for example. So now this is supposed 2 mod 3, the mod operator returns the remainder when we divide 2 by 3, right? And then if I print var1, it should give me that. So that's the remainder, all right? And then if I look, there's an operator called the floor division. This is different from division. Let's look at an example for that. if I do 19 by 5, 19 divided by 5, that's what it gives me. All right. Oh, let's see. Wait. Interesting. Oh. Okay. Anyway, so I probably have a setting in my, this is my local machine, so I don't know what's going on here, but when you just divide it, it's going to give you a floating point number. And when you use the floor division, it's going to give you the floor value of the division of the two numbers. All right. And then let's talk about multiplication and the difference between multiplication sign and this. So this is a power operator. So when you do 2 power 3, it gives you 8. That means 2 to the power 3. All right. When you just do with a single asterisk, it just gives you the multiplication of the both. All right. Let's look at some other operators. Like there are other operators called comparison logical operators. For comparison operators, they compare the value of any two variables. All right. If I say var1 is equals to 12 and I say var2 is equals to 10, and if I do var1 is greater than var2. Okay, so what does this do? This is doing 12 is 12 greater than 10. So it is, right? That's why it returns false. So this is a comparison operator. Now, there are other comparison operators like this is the greater than, then the less than, and then there's something called not equals. That means these two variables do not have equal values. This is going to return true in this case because they both are 10, 12 and 10 respectively. And then you have this is something greater than equal to. It's just what it looks like. So if these variables are greater than or equal to, then it'll return true or else false. Now, this is all about the comparison operators. Now let's look at some logical operators. So there are 3 types of logical operators: and, or, and not. If you want to do var1 and var2. Now this performs the AND operation between two variables. If both of them return true, the overall expression returns true. And if one of them returns false, the overall expression returns false. For OR, the syntax is the same. We just write OR instead of AND. And if one of the variables is true, the whole expression is going to be true. All right. And then there's not. So when you not what? That's how you use not. You place not in front of a variable to negate whatever its value is. If var2 is true in the beginning, doing not to it will reverse its value. All right. Okay. Then let's see some of the identity operators before going over the assignment operators. So identity operators are is and is not. So if you want to see if two variables are actually the same, so you can do var1 is equal to 6, okay, var2 is equals to 6, and then if you do var1 is var2. This gives you true because both of them are the same, all right? And it works the same for is not. That compares if two variables are not the same. And then membership operators. So for membership operators, you'd use these more when you deal with lists and stuff, but you should know about them. You want to see if a particular element exists in a certain list or string for that matter. Okay, I can give you an example with a string. So if I say I have a variable called which stores hello, and then I check if there's a h in my string, all right? That's how I would do it. So this is me checking if I have h in a string that I declared called var1. So that's true, right? Because there's a h in hello. Now, z. There's no z in hello, so it returns false. Not in works in the same way, the syntax the same, you just type not in instead of in. This will return true because there's no z in hello. Okay, so these are membership operators. Now, looking at some assignment operators, we know how we assign a value to a variable using equal to sign, right? But you may see some things like this in Python. All right, so now what this means is you're just doing this is equals to, sorry, that's 1 is equals to var1 plus 2. So basically you're just adding 2 to the previous value of var1. That's what this means. It's just a shorthand of doing this whole thing to this, all right? Okay, that we defined a string. Okay, that's a good point. So now we said here, right here, that hello was a string, right? And then I tried to do something like this. So now if I do this, I got an error which says I cannot concatenate string with integer objects. So initially my var1 did have integer values, but I modified it to be a string now. So I cannot add an integer to a string. You need to take care of that, all right? If var1 was just 2 or 3, I could have added doing that. So if I do the same thing for var2, it's going to work because var2 is 10, all right? Okay. And then operators. Now, if these are some string operations, if I have a string called string rst, which says hello, if I do something like this, it's going to print hello 10 times. That means I'm multiplying hello 10 times, okay? But I cannot do this to a string. As we saw, we cannot add an integer to a string. This is going to give me an error, all right? So these are some basic operators in Python. If you guys have any confusion, you can just put your mic on and then speak. Okay. Now, you also saw some asserts in your assignment and lab. So now what assert does is checks if the condition is true or not. So the syntax is going to be this. And if you write assert true, it's going to run without giving you any error, because that means this statement is true. If I can do anything else instead of this, if I do this, it's going to throw an error because this statement right here is false. 2 is not greater than 3. This is just going to pass. So whatever condition you give here, whatever statement you give here, assert is going to check if that is true or not. If that's not, it's going to throw an error. And if it's true, you're not going to see anything. Okay. Looking at conditionals, conditionals are a conditional execution of a group of statements. So if you want to execute something, but you only want to execute it when something else is true or false or whatever, you do conditionals. Conditionals, there are 3 things that you want to know about: if, else if, and else. So now this is the syntax. You start off by writing if, give a expression here, a condition here that needs to be true if you want to print this inside if, all right? Now let's just look at if first. If I wanna, if 2 is greater than 10, let's declare var1 first. var1 is equals to 12 right now, maybe. it prints hello. When I run this block, it gives me hello. Why though? Because the var1 is 12. It checks if 12 is greater than 10. It is, so it prints hello. But if var1 were 9, for example, what would it do? It would not do anything because it doesn't go inside this block and doesn't print hello. Now, print done. So if now var1 were 9, it's going to print done because it does not print hello and it comes outside and just prints done. All right. Now, looking at else if. Now, else if is something that you give between if and else. Now, if you want to check multiple conditions, you're going to give else if. Now, this was a if. If there is some other condition where you want to execute some other prints or something else, you just say elif. It's else if, short of else if. 30 is greater than 10. If this is true, it's going to print this. And then there's else, where if no if or no else if is true, it prints the else. It goes inside the else and prints the else statement. All right. So you can have anything. It can be anything inside these if and else ifs. It does not need to be a print. You don't need to print something. It just can be anything. All right. Now, when I do this, if 10, if I run this block, let's see how we get this output. So if 10 is greater than 20, is this condition true? It's not, right? So it does not print this. Now, it checks for this. If is 30 greater than 10, it's true. So it goes inside this block and prints inside elif. Now, will it print the else? No, because one of these conditions were true. So then it goes out of everything and then prints outside if. So that's how we get these outputs. All right. So that's all about operators and conditionals. If you have any questions, you can ask. And then Paul, you can take over now.
Hey, Alshia, that was good. I'm gonna do a breakout room with one person.
Okay.
Yeah, just look at the chat. Okay.
Okay.
Hello. All right. Let me see. Oh, you're doing this one too. What happens if you assert an integer saying this one there is an assertion error? Yeah, so another person had this issue. Typically, like that would still be like it would still assert that it would still be true. There would be probably one integer that you would try that would assert or give you an error, like a lower integer.
Lower as in lesser value?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're like another person was overthinking this. Yeah, try that. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what you need to do actually.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Wait. I think I have a wait. Well, now you're ready.
Okay.
Oh yes. Do you see? You can see my cursor
Yeah.
here. I mean, I know that it's going to be an error regardless, but were we supposed to specifically subtract different strings or same string, or it doesn't matter?
Actually, so this question, what was the question for this one? I haven't looked at this for a while.
Here.
Let me see. So why don't you have answered the question using what happens if you try to subtract two strings? Yeah, it doesn't matter because typically you can't subtract strings.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anything, it could be the same, it could be two different ones. That's good. What you have is good.
Okay.
Okay.
Is this normal? Okay, I'm done right now. Just a moment. Is this normal looking? Because I
Okay, so as long as let me read for a second. As long as 4 to the third, okay, and remainder, and then the other one is it doesn't give you an error, right?
no, it's just prints true.
Okay. I think you're good. You're good to go. There's multiple ways of. There's actually like 2 ways to do this, but what you have is 1 way.
Is this the less efficient way?
This would be the more obvious way. Like if you just read it, if you read what it tells you.
Like and translated.
Yeah, and it's like, and the other way is like if you were to put like more comparisons, which I don't know why you would do that. Like you would just
Like
directly,
Boolean
yeah,
comparison?
yeah. Like if you were to do like you know how you had 4 raised to the third,
Okay.
and then you would just do like 2 less thans. Like if you do less than and then another less than, you could do that instead of like repeating the 4 to the third power.
Wait. The less than would go. Oh, I
You know what I
see.
mean? Yeah, because like that one, this is kind of like the inequality. Like if you had an inequality of like 2.
But then I need to worry about the parentheses, right? Because then.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I wouldn't worry about it. Like if you were to look, because we are gonna. I don't. Did the CL1 solution get posted already?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. People are asking about it. I think later.
Okay, because you will see the other solution like once CL2 is out. But but what you have, it's fine. I guess in terms of figuring it out later on, just explore like different ways of doing
Okay.
something. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for your help.
Yep. All right. All right. We're back.
Yeah. Luke, if you're still there, do you still need to create a breakout room for you?
I think the other person, yeah, the other
Yeah.
person.
Got it.
Okay. So wait, you need another one, or
Yeah, I think so. Just check the chat.
okay. Okay, I'll create one then. Hold up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm gonna go to the breakout room.
The other person not here.
Oh,
There's one
not.
other person who wanted.
Oh, you already figured out yours?
Well, basically, I was gonna ask it to her. It was the same question I had, except like, why does does 0 just raise an assertion error because it's none?
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. The other, yeah, I did help the other person. I think it was what she was doing was kind of similar, but then overthinking it. So, if you're gonna do that one, like as long as you're asserting something that's false, it should work out. But
Oh, and 0 is false because it's none.
yeah,
Okay. Okay.
cool.
Okay.
Yeah, other questions, man?
No, that was literally it. I was so confused. I was like, why is this not
Yeah.
working? 0.
Everyone's in the same boat. Like that one, if you look at like Piazza, I was like, why is it? Yeah, that question got asked.
I forgot about Piazza. I'm stupid. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, all right.
So for this question, it's up to you. Make it different cells to be more clear. Just makes it more readable. Okay. There's a question about explaining raise not implemented error.
Oh, that one. Yeah, I think that was in the main.
Yeah, that was in the FAQs. You got to delete that line after you've written your code. All right. So you need to replace that with the code that you write. Now, explaining what that is it raises an error in our testing suite if you've not answered the question at all. and we can handle that. That's just for us. So you can just remove that for yourself and write the code instead of that line.
Oh yeah, Shlisha, can you go over the operator challenges in part 2? There's a question about that.
Okay. So now let's actually. Okay, let's try to form a question of our own and then go through it. Okay, in operator challenges, you see questions like which involve multiple operators in a single line. So I'm going to share my screen and show you what and how we can do with a question of my own. Okay. Let's just do it here. Okay, there. So set a variable. $21 squared should be maybe greater than equal to this. Okay, if that's the question, I would do something like it wants me to create a variable var1, and then it wants me to do 21 squared. It wants me to check if 21 squared is greater than equals to 1000. All right, so I just do this. Okay, and then I just run this. So that's the way you go about solving the operator challenges. Read the line one by one, and then you can just form expressions like these. So these are multiple operators in a single line. First, we're finding the square of 21, and then we're checking if it's greater than or equal to 1000. So if you print var1, it's either going to be true or false, because that's a comparison operator, right? So it's going to be false because, I don't know what, 21 squared. Let's check. That's 441. It's not greater than 1000, and that's why it prints false. So that's the way you go about solving operator challenges. If you have a very specific question, shoot me a private question, or Paul can do a breakout.
For operator challenges, it said that there are at least 2 ways of writing the code. Can you show us multiple possibilities to solve that?
Okay, so the operators are going to remain the same. What the question means by that is if you had a lot of operator combinations in a single line, you could maybe group them differently together. The operators are going to remain the same. That does not mean you have different kinds of operators for doing the same function. So, for example, oh, okay. Also, 21, if you need to find a power of something, you do need to do 2 asterisks, and this thing in the chat does not work.
Oh yeah, for the operator challenge for part 2, there was a question. I was like, this is the second question for that, but mainly you could just do, like, for example, if you're gonna compare it, like we have so many different ways to compare something. You could use the and, right, or you can do equality operators. Just try to experiment how else you would combine those, and that's why it says there's multiple ways, because it's not just one way. But the most obvious way is just if you were to read it and then translate that to symbols. Hey Nick, I was gonna answer that later on, but yeah. So strings you can't.
Sorry, you said you cannot.
Yeah, so you can add them, concatenate if you're doing strings, but you can't subtract them. You could also multiply them, like an integer by a string.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
All
And
right.
then also, can you assert none?
Yes.
What was that?
Can
He's
you assert,
asking if we can assert none. Yeah, you can assert none. So none, that's just going
Yeah.
to return false because that's a false value. Yeah.
but you have to address none. You have to set none equal to a variable.
Yes, you can. Or you could just do assert none. That works as well.
Right. Well, I'm getting an error when I do that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh wait. So you're making none as a variable, like you're assigning a
No,
variable.
I just left none by itself. Like assert none is all I
That's
have.
because, okay, so yeah, that's because when you assert something that is false, that does give you an error, and that's what's expected. So that's fine.
Yep.
Okay, the error is supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So then for the coding lab, you're just supposed to like write it out of like how you would solve it, and if you get the error, you just like let it be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Then yeah. Okay. That's all the question I had.
Okay. All right, man.
Okay.
Okay. I think you can begin.
Yeah, we can.
All right. So hey guys, this is Cogs 18 Coding Lab 2. Hope you guys enjoyed your week 1. Now we're entering into week 2. So just some housekeeping items. So your Coding Lab 2, it's going to be due tonight before midnight, and then your assignment 1 is due on Monday next week before midnight. And then we're going to do this from now on. So in the beginning, we're going to be answering a few of the FAQs that were prompted throughout the week. And just to show you guys, this is a group FAQ that you can find online. I'll just show you guys where you can find that. So if you go on the website here on Canvas, it's one of the links that got added in, which is this. And so for the first one here, I think you're going to see this in your assignment or coding lab. So if you read this, this is just translating. Most of the time, the difficulty is translating the words into coding language. So much practice is needed. So if you see is not the same as, this is just saying type in exclamation point and equal sign, which just means not the same. So you're comparing two things that are not the same, and that should be true. And if it is the same, then it's false. And then the next question here is find at least one integer that raises an assertion error. A lot of people have been prompting this question. This is in probably part 3 of your coding lab too. So one hint that we can give you is just assert an integer and then it will give you an error. So out of all the integers that you can possibly have, try experiment, and then if it has an error, then that's the one. And if it doesn't have an error, then it won't spit you anything, but the main point is it needs to give you an error. And more on this later on. So this third question, we clarified this during the last coding lab. Mainly when you see this in your coding labs, make sure you take out the hashtag that says implement the code, or put code here, and then remove this line. Make sure you remove this line before you run your code. And then this next question is how do I add a comment to the Markdown? Well, for a Markdown cell, you just add your text there. You don't need to do anything extra. For a code cell though, that's the one where you put in a hashtag before you add in your comment. For this next question, the second part of the operator questions. So this is a common question that was also in the other session. Mainly what you're gonna see in your coding lab 2, part 2, is you're gonna compare integers using inequality symbols, and what you need to do is those need to output as true. So this is what the question is asking. So they all need to be true. And this next question is when it says assert none, and that's what I think is good about Python or Jupyter Notebook, is for the most part, when it says assert none, or if you're translating the word into coding language, it is what you think it would be. So assert none. So yeah. And then this last question, when it says declare a Boolean into a variable, a Boolean is just true or false, and then when you're assigning that or declaring it, just make sure that you have a variable that's assigned and then equal sign and then put in as like true or false. Okay, so enough of that. Now Ashisha's gonna give you a demo. All right, take it away.
Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to review some concepts that we saw in the lecture. This is going to be helpful for your assignment as well as your coding lab that's due today. All right. Let's see. So let's begin with variables. These are just some things that you store values in. All right. There can be different types, data types of variables. Types are integer, string, Boolean, none, float. Now, looking at this, var1 is equals to 2.3, or it can be any value for that matter. So that's how you store a value into a variable using assignment operator. Now, if I want to check or see what the type of this var1 is, I would do type in bracket var1. So when I run this block, it gives me float. That's because we've stored a float value or a decimal value in my var1. Now, there are other data types. This is a string data type. I have a variable called var2, which has hello in it. If I type of var2, I'm going to get str because it's a string type. And then looking at var3, it has none in it. That means it's a none type data type. When I run this block, it's going to give me a none type. That's the type of the data, all right? There can be Boolean data types as well. If I have a var4 and I store a value true in it and I check the type of var4, run this block, gives me a bool. That's a Boolean type, right? Okay. Those are the types of data that you can store in a variable. Now, it's a very good coding practice to give meaningful names to the variables that you use. Suppose if you're working with fruits, and if you want to see the diameter of a fruit maybe, then you give the variable name a fruit diameter, which might look like something like fruit diameter. It's just easier to read, because when you have a lot of variables in your code, it becomes difficult to understand what variable represents what. So it's always a good habit for your variables to be self-explanatory. All right. And then, so you can have multiple assignment operators in a single line. You can assign multiple variables to some value in a single line. That's how you do it. It's just going to mean that A and C equals 2. So when I run this, I can just run this without any error. That's just a Pythonic way of doing it. Okay. So now you also have some things called keywords in Python, or in any other coding language for that matter. Make sure you don't name your variables as your keywords. So keywords look like if, else, etc. So you've seen some of them, and you'll see more of them as the class proceeds. So don't name your variable with these. Make sure you don't do that, because if you just do if equals 2, if I want to wait integer variable, which contains 2, and if I say if equals 2, that's not going to work, because if is a keyword reserved for a specific purpose. So you can't just say if equals 2 or hello or whatever. So make sure you name your variables appropriately. Okay. That's all about variables. If you have a question, you can type in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and then speak. Okay, moving on to operators. There are different types of operators. We'll begin with arithmetic operators. These are the basic math operators like addition, multiplication, division, subtraction. And then there's this mod operator, which finds the remainder of a number divided by some other number. All right. So looking at the mod operator, because that's new, var1 equals, if I do var1 equals 2 mod 3, that's going to give me the remainder of when I divide 2 by 3. All right. Let's just run this block. It gives me 2 because the remainder is 2. All right. And then we have something called floor division. So in floor division, let me see this. Okay, so in floor division, you can find the division of two numbers and return the floor value of it. So for example, if I want to divide 17 by 3, just normal division would give me this, all right? But if I want to find the floor division, I would do this, and this will give me 5.0. That's the floor value. If you remember, the initial was 5.666. So if you just round it off, it's going to be 6, but doing floor division gives you the lower bound. Okay, now there's another operator that looks like two asterisks versus a single asterisk, which is multiplication. So now this is the power of operator. When you do 2 power 3, that's how you do it. This is going to give you 8 because the value of 2 raised to the power 3 is 8. And that's how you do it in Python. Now, if you would have just had a single asterisk, it would have given you 6, that is 23. That's the difference between a single asterisk and a double asterisk. All right. Now, looking at the other type of operators that are there, starting off with comparison operators. There are operators like greater than, less than, greater than, equal to. Let's look at some of them. Now, if we have two variables, first is called var1, which is 12. The other is var2 called 10. And if I do something like this, var1 is greater than equals 10. If I run this block, it's going to give true because 12 is greater than 10, right? So now this operator can be anything. It can be less than equals to, it can be equals to. Now, if I do not equals to, this means that this var1 is not equals to 2. That's what it means, all right? Now, when I run this block, it's going to give me true because 12 is not equals 10. Those are your comparison operators. Now, looking at logical operators, there are 3, and, or, and not. You just write and, or, and not when you want to, in syntax of it. So now, do I have any example for that yet? Okay, let's just make. if you want to do var1 and var2. That's how you use and for in syntax for doing compare these things. If var1 is 12 here and var2 is 10, right? If I do this, it gives me 10. Okay, let's make and now the first value is true and the second value is false. If one of them is true and the second one is false, it gives me false because and works when both of them are true, it returns true. All right. I could have had or instead of and the syntax would remain the same. Just say true or false, and this will give me true because one of them is true. Now, not works in a different way. If I write not true, this will give me false because this negates the whatever truth value the statement has. Right now it's true, so it negates it and makes it false. Okay, those are your logical operators. Now looking at some assignment operators, now we have seen how we can assign a value to a variable just like this. There are some other assignment operators that you could use. For example, you could do var1 plus equals 2, for example, sorry, equals 2. Now, this means if I spread this out, this would just mean just this. So add 2 to the previous value of var1 and store it in var1. All right, that's what this means. All right, that's just a shorthand of writing this whole thing down. There are other assignment operators. You could do addition, you could do subtraction. Any arithmetic operator can be combined with the assignment to make an assignment operator. All right. Now, looking at identity operators are is and is not. So basically, if you have two variables called 20 and then 30, and then you say A is B. If these are the same, this is going to give me true, and if these are not the same, it's going to give me false. So in this case, they're not the same. So
Ashlisha,
yeah.
So there was a question on the the plus or minus. Do you think you can go over that again?
The assignment operator plus and minus?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, let's see. So if I have a variable which is initially equal to 10, and then I use this assignment operator to do this, and then let's see what the value of var1 is. All right, it gives me 12 because initially the value was 10, and then I do something like this, which means var1 equals to var1 plus 2. All right, so I'm adding 2 to the initial value of var1, which is 10. So 10 plus 2 is 12, and so it gives me 12.
There's a follow-up on that. Can you do minus equals, or is it just plus equals?
Okay, it can be minus equal, it can be multiplication equal. So let's try with minus equal. All right, now minus equal should, in my mind, give me this, right? Gives me 8. Now let's try multiplication. In my mind, it should be var1 into 2, which is 20. There you go. So it can be anything. It's just a shorthand of writing the whole big thing. Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Moving on. So we saw identity operators, is not. Let's see membership operators, which means if a certain value is present, these you'll use later on when you use lists and stuff. This can be used to check if a certain value is present in a bunch of values, right? So now I can show this with the help of a string. So let's see. If I have a string called hello, and if I do something like h in var, this gives me true because h is present in var, which is hello. So h is present in hello, that's why it gives me true. And then there's the complement of it, which is not in. So I can use it to check if certain value is not present in something. This is going to give me false because h is in fact present in hello, right? So those are the membership operators. Then let's see. If you have a float value and an integer value, when you divide those, you're always going to get float, whatever the order. We saw the division here, right? We divided a float by an integer. That's possible, and that just returns a float. Now, a few string operations. If you have a string called hello, you could do something like this. And this would print hello 10 times. So we are multiplying the string 10 times. You could do that. But you cannot do this instead of the multiplication. You cannot add an integer to a variable, string variable. Let's see what this gives us. So this says it cannot concatenate string and integer values, which is true because 10 is an integer value and this is a string. So I cannot add both of them. All right. If I had two strings, this was a question, so I'm answering. I could do this. Let's see what this gives me. Oops, sorry. There. So this gives me hello plus by. That means I'm concatenating two strings together. All right. So you could do this. Now, moving on. This is all about operators. Let's see assert statement. So a lot of you have confusion how to use asserts. So assert is something that you use to check if something is true or not. All right. Whatever you write after assert, it checks if it's true. If it's true, it just passes without showing you anything. If it's false, you get an error, which is expected. All right. So if you have a variable called var1, you name it to false, and then you assert var1. So var1 is false, and if I'm asserting it, it's going to throw an error. This is what you see when something is false. You don't need to have this. If I want to assert 2 is greater than 3. Even then, it's going to throw an error because the statement here is false. Okay. If I make it true, if 2 is less than 3, that's true, right? It's just going to pass without showing you anything. Okay. That's how assert works. It asserts something. Now, moving on to conditionals. Now, when you want to execute certain statements based on a certain condition, you use conditionals. You need to know about if, else, and else if, that is, or elif. Now, starting with if I have a variable initiated to 9 called var1, and I want to print hello only if that var1 is greater than 10. So I would write something like if var1 is greater than 10, then print this, a colon, and then next line with a tab, because Python is intended, you need to take care of the indentation, and then print hello. So after you come out of the block, it just prints done. When I run this, it prints done right now because the value of var1 is 9. So 9 is greater than 10. Only if this condition is true, it goes inside. But this is false right now. If, for example, I make it 11, it prints hello and then prints done because 11 is greater than 10, so it prints hello. All right, that's how if works. Now, I have a else. So now if none of the if conditions are true, it just goes inside else and prints something that is inside else. So now one thing to keep in mind is it's not necessary to have prints inside if and else. You could have anything. You could have assignments or whatever you want. All right. Else if, when you want to check multiple conditions inside a if, you use else if. Now, this is the second condition that's there, and then print inside or whatever, do whatever inside. It works the same way. Okay, let's run this block, this big block, and see what happens. Okay, it prints these things. Let's see what happens. In the first line, it checks if 10 is greater than 20. It's not, so it just skips that. The second elif, it's got to check if 30 is greater than 10. It is, so it prints this thing. And then will it go inside the else? It will not, because one of the if conditions or elif conditions was true. So it comes out of the block and prints outside it. All right. That's all about conditionals. And then you can keep working on your assignments or coding lab, and then ask us questions by either texting us or just raising your hand or speaking out. Thank you.
Alicia, thank you. I'm gonna do a breakout room with Gabrielle.
Okay.
Gabrielle. All right. Hey, how you doing? Okay. If you want to show me what you have.
Okay, I'm trying to show you. How do I share my screen?
It's the share screen arrow up. Are you able to share? Because they kind of changed the settings.
Can you see now?
Oh yes, I can see. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Let me see if I can move this. There we go. Okay. So for this part,
Okay.
where it says set answer as a result of integer 1.
Yeah.
So am I supposed to put integer 1, or so these are the variables or the values that go into integer 1?
Okay.
Am I supposed to like run it like this and then put a new cell and then put answer 1 equals 3.0? Or how
Okay.
did they
This is
want us to
assignment
do?
1, right?
Yeah, this is assignment 1, just the part 2.
Let me see. So yeah, sometimes the wording is different because like 'cause you could switch it and then you just want to make sure it's correct. But from what the way it's worded out, yeah, that's how you would do it.
Okay, so I just add another cell and then assign the value 3.0 into answer 1 as a variable.
Yeah.
And
So
then I just run these asserts.
yeah, I would like a lot of people are asking about this. Like if you're gonna, because like it's asking you three things, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you could do it two ways. The way that it's usually done though is like just put it in one coding block and then do it that way instead of like running each one individually. Just do all
Oh, okay.
in like one coding block.
So how would I do that? So then if I ran this one, how would I show, I guess if I hit enter, then I would just go answer 1 equals
Okay.
3.0 like that. And
Uh,
then if I run it, it just goes,
that
is that what you mean?
Yeah, so okay, let me clarify. So when it says set like whatever variable this is, and then as a result of another variable divided by another one, uh, it's really just like obviously like when you're that's why I'm like when we're doing these coding labs, like that the variables are already defined, like answer 1, because you would just do it that way. You would define the variable and then assign it whatever is next. So in this case, like answer 1 and then the integer 1 and then whatever, instead of because the the way you're doing it right now is it doesn't know that answer 1 is uh like two variables, like you're doing an operation of two.
Oh, so you're talking about like set answer 1 equal to like
Exactly.
can
Yeah.
I delete this?
Yeah.
Like this?
Yeah, it's more
Okay.
yeah, it's more elegant that way. That's like you could do it the way you did.
Oh,
But
because I guess I didn't set it. Oh, wait. Oh, I don't know. What am I doing? Is that wrong?
no, that was right. It's just the way it's funny because in Jupyter Notebook, or I guess in Python, you just have to define the variable, the way it was defined, like exactly, like integer and then underscore 1 and 2.
Oh, and then do this?
No, what you had was correct. It's just the underscore.
Oh.
The underscore was sorry. What you had was correct. It's just the underscore was missing. What you had was correct though.
Oh.
Yeah.
The where the answer was equal.
Yeah, you have to define it this way. Yeah, but then you have to be careful about how you're retyping the variables because they're very case sensitive or symbol sensitive, I guess.
Oh,
Yeah.
so like this. Is
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
what, is that what this question is asking? Just do it like that?
Yeah. And then you just have to do that
Okay.
for the rest of them.
Okay, so then I would just add in cells
I
or
would what
keep
I
it
would
in that one block.
just do it in one block. You could do it
Okay.
either way, but it'll run and there's no error. But
Uh-huh.
typically, like if you wanna, cause like when you're doing like multiple like coding lines,
Mm-hmm.
in like Python, what ends up happening is everything isn't like run. Like you might make a mistake, is what I'm saying, because you can individually run each coding block, and then if you're gonna do it where it's individually like you have one for each line, then you may not you may make a mistake where you don't run that coding block and then it gives you an error. But if you put everything in one coding block, then it runs all of your lines, and then in a sense like it's faster. But
Mm-hmm.
for like when you're coding though, it's in Python, it's easier to put it all in one coding block. I'm just saying.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then for these assert ones, these ones I just like test them, right? I don't have to do anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of question about assert. Like, I don't know if you've been in Piazza. Like, a lot of people are asking about it.
Yeah, it's just so confusing a little bit.
I know, I know. But for I mean, as far as just what is in the coding lab or the assignments, yeah, you just leave them the way it is,
Okay.
unless it's asking you to do something. Like
Okay.
for coding
Okay.
lab 2, it's asking you to do something with assert.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's all I had. Thank
Okay,
you, Paul.
cool. All right. All right, we're done.
Okay, so there's another question, the same question for the operator explorations. Yes, you could create new markdown cells and write your predictions in it.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, there's another question which asks what exactly is none and can we assign anything to none? None is a Python data type which says that the variable contains no none type value. That means it has no integer or float or anything. It's just a data type, all right? You can assign any variable to none, and when you assert none, it's going to return false. It's false because none is a false value. Yeah.
Okay, I guess just continue working. We're gonna just yeah, be here and let us know if you need anything.
Yeah. Yes, so all asserts do pass without showing you anything if they're true.
Okay, Ashlisha, I'm gonna do another breakout room. Hey, how you doing?
Hi.
All right.
So, because I was looking at CL2
Okay.
and I was trying to do the defining variables.
Yeah.
I'm already confused on the very first part.
Okay. Can you share your screen? Yeah, CL2 is yeah, like the first lab was pretty simple, yeah. And then this
Yeah.
one is definitely, you'll definitely want to like this first like a second lab, but then first group of coding that you guys are going to learn is the basis of everything. It's going to build on it. So yeah, let me see what you have.
The question is how to do that, because right now I'm using the computer, but I have the tablet for the Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Do you want me to project through the camera the?
Yeah, that's fine. The last time they did that too. There was like a couple people. I'll try my best.
If it doesn't work out, then I'll try to put it through the computer.
Okay.
Let me see. Do you know if? Let me switch the camera.
Oh yeah, the one thing about this is once you because we're doing this, you're gonna have to keep on talking, and then I'm gonna mute myself. But explain what you have though.
Okay, well, I wanted to, because I was in the section right now and I was seeing how she was explaining it, but I'm a little confused with the part with the variables. Because when it says declare an inflow string or Boolean, fill them in with any values you want, do I just write one of them on the very first part and then add a value?
Okay, so I understand that one now. So for this, what you have to do is, so this is just practicing the different ways of defining like different types of variables. You do you know what a string, an integer, and a Boolean is?
No, could you explain that for me?
Okay, so no, it's okay. So the one thing that a lot of people get confused in is like the integer and the float. So an integer is anything without decimals. That's how I remember it. And then a float is just everything with a decimal. I believe a float is also an integer is also a float, like technically, but it doesn't have decimals. But then if you have like a string, I did this last week, but a string is, and then Ashlisha also talked about it. But a string is pretty much anything that's like a word, but it could also be a number. But the way you would do it in like Jupyter Notebook is you define it with 2 apostrophes or quotation marks. So that's a string, even though whatever you're putting in there is a number. And a Boolean variable would be like true or false. But then I in Python, the one thing is you need to be careful about what like your case, like if it's a lowercase, the letters that you're gonna put in. So if you're gonna define a Boolean variable, it needs to be like true with a capital T and then false with a capital F, or else it's gonna be like an error. Does that make sense?
So I have to capitalize the first letter, right?
Yeah. Does it?
Perfect.
Yeah. So those are the 4 main variable types. There's a 5th one, but this one's not asking you that. But the 5th one is pretty much a none type. So none would be you rarely use it though. So I guess you don't worry about it. But so for this first part, just define like you know how like it says type my int
Type my. Oh yeah.
and my float, yeah. So those are the ones you have to define. Those are the variable names. And then so do you know how to assign like to a variable?
How to assign a variable?
Yeah, like if you have my int, right, is your variable name, and then you want to assign it like, for example, 2 or 3.
So would I write variable 1 or 2?
No, like this one's really simple, like it because it's saying it wants you to check if type my int is a variable or is like a integer. So you would define my underscore int, and then you just assigning it would be using an equal sign. So my underscore int equal sign, and then whatever number that's an integer. Does that make sense?
Would it work like that?
So like you know how like it says type my int, and so type my int is it's already a command. Like that's the one thing about like so if you're very new to like coding, the when you have because type is type is a command, and what ends up happening is when you put in type and then you put in the variable my int inside, uh it becomes a type. So you can't really add 2 to it because it's not an integer anymore. So what you would have to do is, so you know how like you have type my int, right? You have to define my int first. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry. I'm so new into the whole coding thing. That's why I'm like I really don't.
It's all good. Like so yeah, like I guess to put it simply, it's like so you know how you have my underscore int, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like that. Like when I'm looking at code, like and then it's just like, what the heck is this doing, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I just Google it first. That's the best thing. So you don't know what type or whatever it may be, the command type. And then but in this case, what ends up happening is it's checking the variable my underscore int if it's a string, integer, float, or boolean, whatever, and then but then the very first thing is, what is that variable? You haven't defined it yet. So you like before the type my int, you would put in my underscore int and an equal sign. Let's say like put in 1. Try that, and then I'll explain.
But within the same parentheses?
No, it has to be like one line before it.
One line before it.
Yeah, like on the top of that line. So you have type, so one line before that, the top of it.
Oh, you mean the top right here?
Yeah. Yeah, put your code there, yeah. And then make sure you erase the race.
And another question I had about that,
Yeah.
do I erase the hashtag or no?
Okay, so you mean for the comment, the hashtag thing?
Yeah.
So you don't have to, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't do anything because it doesn't read it if you put in the hashtag in there. It's up to you, but then the raise command, that one, it has to be removed.
Okay, I'll remove it. Wait a second.
Yeah.
So did you mean it like this?
Yeah, let me see. I can't see the, what was it?
Um.
Yeah, erase the hashtag though. It won't read it because there's a hashtag.
Oh.
That's what you meant though.
Yeah, that's the one I meant.
No, it's all good. So yeah, like that one is good. Now it reads it, and so what you're gonna do is to try. So run that first, and then
Okay.
run the
Alright.
type my int. What happens? What did it say? Integer.
It say
Int.
out 7.
Yeah. So it did run, no error. That's good. So what's gonna so that's good to go because that's what you wanted to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for the other ones, you just do the same thing, like my float.
So I have to change the one on top right here.
You don't so all four of those have to run. So you need to keep my int and then just add in three more variables.
Do
Does
I
that
add
make
them to the very first line?
like add it like I would probably add it as like 4 different lines, but then the coding block is the same. Put it, you know where my int equals 1 that you define, put it below, put it in the same cell, but then put it below that my int line.
Okay, let me see. Like this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, below it.
And because I'm trying to find my float, do I write my float?
Yeah, exactly how it's shown. It's very case and symbol sensitive.
Let me see. And then do I put it equal to a number?
Yeah, but then you know the difference between the two, right? This is a very important one. That's why.
If I recall, you said that this one can't do decimals.
Yeah, so this one has to have a decimal.
So for example, I could use 1.5.
Exactly. Yeah.
And does it matter that it's like it goes down like that, or do it have to be aligned?
You mean like it's indented?
Yeah.
So in Python, it's the same with most coding languages, but it doesn't matter how you indent or how you read it, like the white space in between or in the beginning, whatever. The it's up to you. For me, like what I usually do is I line them up. So like if because it's just cleaner. Like if you were to the reason why you would indent it, like if you've seen those, is you know how like we're gonna cover this later on, but like, if you have like a for loop or like a while loop, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you probably heard of it. But the reason why you do it is so that you know when you're editing it, debugging it, it's all in line. So everything in that for loop is indented, and then if you do another one, then it's indented. But in this case, you could just line it up. It doesn't matter though.
Okay, and because it will still run, right?
Yeah, it'll still run. Yeah.
So now that I put my flow and then equals to 1.5, do I run it?
Yeah, make sure you always run the definition, and then before you do a command like type.
What do you
What
mean
happened?
run the definition?
So you know how like you're declaring the variables like my int, my float.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna you wanna line those. You wanna run that first before you do like type my int, my float.
So yeah, like so running it, for example, when I run my int, I run it once and then I write my flow and then I run it again, right?
Yeah. Did you run it?
I ran it, but this is what it gave me.
Can I say it again? Like, that's why I was like looking at it. I was like, why does it? Okay. Actually, keep on talking.
Okay. Yeah. Um. That's what. Yeah, that's what it gave. I don't know what's. That's what it gave me.
Try unindented.
Okay. Let me see. And then run it. Okay. It seems. I believe it worked. And then so now that it ran, I go back to tap my flow and then I run it, right?
Okay, so you ran it.
Yeah.
Go
So
ahead.
so now do I run type my float?
Yeah, Ryan type my float and it should work because you defined my float.
Okay, and I got an out 10 for flow.
Yep, that's exactly what you need to do. And then
Okay, so then
those make sense though, right?
yeah, it makes sense. So now what I do now that I got that one, I go back and then
Yeah.
write the other ones, right?
Yeah, pretty easy. But then the Boolean, it just really you need to know what those are, like the four things. Those are the four main ones.
Yeah, because that looks pretty simple. But so just so I remember, you said for string, what's the difference between them?
String is one where you define it with apostrophe. So you put whatever you put between two apostrophes is a string, or two quotation marks. That's a string.
Okay, and then for Boolean.
Boolean is so true or false, but the capital T and F has to be there.
Okay, so for example, if I did my Boolean, I would put my Boolean equals T, capital T.
True. Capital T and an RUE.
Oh, okay. I thought it's just T.
Yeah, no. I'm trying to not give you all the answers.
Okay. I'm sorry about
No, it's all good.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Now I have a better idea.
Okay, so all the other ones are good to go.
The other ones,
Like other
yeah, because
questions, I meant.
I
Yeah.
don't want to put you in a tough position, that's why I'm gonna see if I could figure it out on my own.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. That's why. But I was. Did you try to look at, like, I guess, skim and scan, and then see if there's anything there?
Um,
It does get really difficult though later on.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I'm already really nervous. My question about the operator questions, when it came to the 30 times 15, is greater than 200.
Yeah.
I don't. You have explained number. Try to answer some questions. Let's start with it. What do I do for it? Does this one? Do I leave it alone?
So let me see. Can you close in and then keep on talking?
Yeah, that one right there where it says 13 times 15 is greater than 200. I'm wondering, do I leave that one alone and go to the other one, or is there something I have to do there?
Every time that it says your code and then there's a raise thing, those are the ones that you have to do something.
Okay. So I don't do anything for this one, right?
I don't believe so, but just like the prompts, read the prompts like before that, and then every if you have like a issue, just like let me know. You can always email me, but if you have any other questions, but then for those ones that says, like, in the cell that says your code here, that's the one you definitely have to. Don't turn it in if you didn't you didn't put your code there.
Okay. And just to make sure, these assignments we're not graded on accuracy, but like how much effort we put in, right?
Okay, so just to clarify that one, the coding labs are for effort. So you try, doesn't matter if it's correct, but the assignments are graded.
Okay. Well, I got a lot of studying to do.
Yeah. Well, you have the assignment one is due until Monday, so just email us or come to our office hours.
Are you guys gonna have any more office hours this week or no?
Yeah, Ashlisha's gonna. Usually mine is on Mondays. I just want to get it over with, but on Ashlisha's one is on Fridays. So just ask her. I think I'm gonna show it again, but I believe it's Friday 3 to 4.
Okay, thank you. And if there's a question I have and I can figure it out, I could always email you guys, right?
Yeah. Do you have our emails?
I believe so. It should be on the syllabus, right?
I don't think so. I'll show it again just in case.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, hold up. Let me just. Here you go. That's the one.
Let me see. Okay, let's see. Okay, thank you so much.
All right. I'll see you. All right. There's a question on the contact. I'm just gonna share this in case.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Hi. I just had a quick question on the assignment there. At the near the bottom where the conditionals are.
Okay. Oh. Did you ask, okay, about the write file?
What was the question?
I can't hear you properly, but I'm assuming it's about the write file. If it is, then you can just ignore that line. You don't have to do anything with it.
Okay. Okay, that's good. All right, guys. Thank you for joining. And then if you have other questions, just email us or comment on Piazza.
Yeah, that's all for today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.